Hi everyone, my name is Kiana Falaha, and today I'll be presenting on strength and conditioning considerations for female athletes. So, the goal of my presentation is to highlight why female athletes need training programs that consider their physiological differences, as well as injury risks and hormonal influences. I'll also discuss current trends and technologies that help optimize training for women. So, let's get started. So first, I'm going to talk about why female-specific programs matter. So these strength and conditioning programs are important for several reasons. So the first being injury risk. Female athletes are significantly more prone to certain injuries, especially their ACL tears, knee injuries, and stress fractures. This is related to differences in anatomy, joint alignment, and neuromuscular control. Because of this, female athletes may require more intentional training in areas like hip strength, landing mechanisms, and core stability. Second reason is the hormonal differences matter. Fluctuations in estrogen and progesterone can influence things like ligament elasticity, muscle recovery, and even how the body uses fuel. These changes can affect performance and injury risk throughout the menstrual cycle. Third, females have been historically underrepresented in sports science research. Many training programs were originally developed using male athletes. So there isn't a lot of research done on female athletes. So I think this is also important to recognize. So as a result, programs that don't consider sex specific needs may not be fully effective or could even contribute to preventable injuries. This is why individualized female focused training is so important. So, before we get into it, I would like to say I think this topic is really important because of my own personal experience. So, I went to a university and played 4 years of college volleyball. And in 1 year from August to December on campus between three sports, there was seven knee injuries, including ACL and patella tendon. And four of those being that there was four of those being soccer, women's soccer team, and out of three of them, I thought it was fascinating that three of them were on their menstrual cycle at the times of them tearing their ACL. So I thought that was really cool, and another reason why I chose this topic and why I think it's so important to consider, hormonal changes in females versus, the difference between females and males. Okay, next. So next, we're going to go over the key physiological differences. So when we talk about strength and conditioning for female athletes, understanding physiological differences is crucial. So first being the muscle mass, females typically have lower total muscle mass, especially in the upper body. This doesn't limit performance, but it does mean that females often benefit from more intentional upper body strength development and progressive overload. And then next is joint stability. Females generally have a wider pelvis, which is very natural for birth and stuff like that. And then which increases the Q angle of the knees. This can put more stress on the knees joint during dynamic movements. And then hormones like estrogen also influence ligament elasticity, which can make certain joints more vulnerable at specific times. And then third being neuromuscular activation. Research shows that females may activate muscles in different patterns than males during running, jumping, and cutting. These differences can influence force production and injury risk, especially at the knee. And then lastly, hormones and recovery. Throughout the menstrual cycle, hormone levels shift and can affect strength, metabolism, fatigue, and coordination. So, for example, the follicular phase often supports higher intensity training, while the luteal phase may require slightly more focus on technique, recovery, and stability. So, understanding these factors allows coaches to better support female athletes as well. So those are some of the key physiological differences in female athletes and strength and conditioning. Moving on to strength training principles. When designing strength programs for female athletes, several principles should guide the process. So the first is definitely frequency. Most female athletes benefit from 2 to 4 strength sessions per week, depending on sports, your training, your age, and your season. So whether that's postseason, during season, off season. So it really just depends on what time of the year you're training these athletes and how heavy. of resistance training you should do rather than just straight lifting and stuff like that. Next, exercise selection. Um, and that's compound movements like squats, deadlifts, lunges, and presses. These are essential for building overall strength because females often have less upper body strength. Including targeted upper body workouts is important in this. Accessory exercises should address common areas of weaknesses such as hips, glutes, and core. So making sure we include all these things in these female athletes' list is very important. So exercise selection is very important when it comes to one of the principles for strength training. Next is neuromuscular control. This includes learning how to land safely, how to jump effectively, and how to stabilize joints under load. These skills help reduce injury risk and improve performance. So this is really important, especially when it comes to landing and stuff like that, and making sure we learn how to land properly from the beginning when you start sports, and not waiting till later on in someone's career to start learning how to land properly and take off properly. Another key principle is progressive overload. This means gradually increasing resistance or difficulty over time. For female athletes, progressive can come through heavier weights, increased reps, or more sets, or reduced rest. I think it's really important to emphasize a day of rest or two in between your weekly training. I know for me personally in college sports for volleyball, in season we give them usually about one day off, and it's usually a Sunday. Sometimes it's good to intermix like a Wednesday or Tuesday day off as well. So incorporating those days off is good when it comes to training. But also if you want to progress in their overload, that's something to consider as well as reducing those days of rest. If it's like 4, you want to, maybe bump that up to 2 days off instead of 4. Again, that all just depends on the time of the season, the female athletes training in, and whatnot. So, and then finally is cycle-based adjustments. So, because of hormone levels changes throughout the menstrual cycle, modifying training and intensity can help maximize performance and sport recovery. So, an example of this would athletes may perform better with heavier lifting in the follicular phase, while the luteal phase might benefit from more technique work and moderate loads. So those are some of the principles. Next, we're going to go and talk about injury prevention. So injury prevention is one of the biggest priorities in female athletes' development. I think it's important in male and female developments, but especially in females. Because first, the ACL and knee injury prevention is important because this involves strengthening the muscles around the hips, the knees, and the core, improving landing mechanics, and training proper cutting techniques. Consistent neuromuscular training can significantly reduce ACL injury risk as well. And then next, going into plyometrics training, plyometrics exercise can help build explosive power and improve how the body absorbs force. However, technique matters. So we don't want to go out there and just have people randomly jumping on boxes. Like we need to make sure we're training properly and talking about the landing mechanics early on, and not just later on in their career, as well as we talked about earlier. So teaching athletes how to land softly, maintain alignment, and control their movements is critical. You see this in a lot of sports when it comes to volleyball or basketball. I know personally when I had a knee injury, I worked on a lot of sport-specific training when it came to my rehab. So a lot of, like for volleyball, was a lot of blocking, moving laterally, blocking again. So I think incorporating those sport-specific things to rehab and recovery, and even in the weight room, I think that's really important to be consistent and to avoid injuries long term. Next is core and hip stability, which also plays a major role. Strong hips and strong core help maintain proper alignment of the knees during dynamic movements. Exercises like planks, glute bridges, and single leg work can significantly reduce the risk of lower body injuries. And so a good way to incorporate these is even when you're just doing a regular squat or deadlift, you want to make sure you're really enhancing your core and using those core muscles throughout your entire lift, and not just, focusing on, oh, I want my quads to be, burning and stuff like that. You need your whole body activated, especially the core, to help reduce those lower body injuries long term. And then lastly is monitoring fatigue. So fatigue decreases coordination and increases the risk of overuse injuries. Using tools like RPE, wellness questionnaires, or wearable tech, which we'll talk about later on, can help coaches track training load, recovery, and rest days, and activate recovery. These are essential components for injury preventions as well. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk a little bit about emerging trends and technology. So these are really important to consider for female athletes, and I think just overall athletes in general. The first one is BFR training, which is basically blood flow restriction. BFR allows athletes to gain and strengthen muscles using very light loads. This reduces joint stress and especially helpful during rehab or periods of fatigue. If you've ever experienced a knee injury or know someone who has experienced a knee injury, BFR is basically your best friend during before you have surgery and after you have surgery, and basically throughout your entire recovery process. I know I personally used it, and I was not a fan, but it was only because it was tough and it was hard to get through. But it did help a lot when it comes to, building those muscles up and strength training and stuff like that. But I will say it's not just in sports necessarily, it's used worldwide. I've heard even, the military use it during their recovery and stuff like that, with those kind of people as well. So it's not just in the sport industry. So I think that's unique about BFR as well. So, and you'll see it as well in, just regular, PTs, and occupational therapy as well, with older people or younger people as well. So BFR is known all over the place. It's not just in sports necessarily. So I think that's really cool. Next is wearable monitoring technology. Devices like GPS trackers, heart rate monitors, or force plates allows coaches to track training loads, fatigue, and movement patterns. This data helps create more individualized and safer training programs. I think this is really good for sports like basketball and soccer. I've seen a lot of that more recently in sports in college, with them wearing trackers just to see how much they are, for example, running in miles, how many miles they're running per game or in practice, and making sure they're not overdoing their practice times and miles and heart rate and stuff like that, and comparing it to game time. So making sure, they're going harder in game time rather than, so much in practice, or vice versa. So I think that's really cool technology that I've started to see more of, and I think it should be starting to be incorporated in, I think, all sports in general, and in like starting to go to high schools and stuff like that would be really cool to see. Next is let's see, is cycle aware programming. Is another new trend by tracking menstrual cycles phases. Coaches can modify training intensity to match an athlete's physiology. This approach can improve performance, reduce fatigue, and potentially lower injury risk, which I think is really unique because, as I said earlier, those four soccer players, three of them were on the menstrual cycle when they did tear the ACL. And so I think that's still research that still needs to be looked more into. And it would be really fascinating to see more discovery about, how much effect does the menstrual cycle have on female athletes' knees and body and injuries and stuff like that. I think it has been a topic of discovery and people wanting to research it, but I think there's not enough. So I think that'd be a really cool area for people to continue to grow and learn more about, because I've seen it firsthand just how crazy it is to see that, four athletes and three of them at the same time had the same injury. So that's cool. And then finally, data-driven performance optimization with access to real-time feedback and analyticals. Coaches can make more informed decisions. They can adjust intensity, identify overtraining sooner, and structure training programs based on the athlete's actual needs, and not just the assumptions. So not just asking how the athletes feel, but really getting a full understanding of how your athletes are doing, and whatnot. Okay, and next. Now, lastly, is the key takeaways. So, to close out, here are the main takeaways from this presentation. First, strength and conditioning programs for female athletes should be individualized. One size fits all approach does not account for the physiological differences that impact performance and injury risk. I think that goes for all athletes, not just females, but especially in female athletes, just knowing the differences and doing more sport specific things and um, taking a different approach from it from just regular athletes. Second, injury prevention must be a major focus as well. Targeted training for the hips, the core, and neuromuscular control can significantly reduce knee and ACL injuries in these female athletes. And then third, optimizing performance requires understanding how females' physiology responds to training. These include cycle-based adjustments, progressive overload, and sport-specific exercises. As I said earlier, maybe in your plyometrics, incorporating more sport-specific exercises and not just saying jump on a box. Let's incorporate adding certain movements that are sport-specific to reduce these injuries and start training those earlier. Next, emerging technology like wearables, BFR, and data analyticals allow for smarter and more precise training. As I said before, these are really good to just see how your athletes are doing throughout practices, throughout games, and then BFR really beneficial when it comes to your rehab if post injury and to help you gain strength and muscle in your joints and whatnot as well. And then finally, following sex specific guidelines lead to safer and more effective and more empowering performances outcomes from these female athletes. So I think those are all really good takeaways from this presentation that anyone can take away. And then here are my references. So thank you for listening. This topic is especially important as the research on female athletes continues to grow. And I hope more people look into it soon. I'm happy to answer any questions. So if you guys want to comment below, just let me know. Thank you.